So, welcome, Eve. Welcome to Stories of Hope. We're really glad that you're here and we're excited to share your story. You have a very inspiring story of recovery from long COVID, severe and debilitating long COVID, I should add. And now you're doing great things in this mind body community. You've set up Recovery Road, which is a community and resource for other people who are healing chronic symptoms using mind body approaches. But we'll get to that later. But for now, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's always an exciting thing to be able to share what happened and know that somebody listening to what happened to me might connect and realize that they can do it too.
Fantastic. So let's dive in. And I want to go back to the beginning of your story and actually before your symptoms began and to ask you what life looked for you at that point. I know you were in your early 30s, living a busy professional life as a speech therapist, but how did it look and feel to you at the time?
I had, just a normal life, working hard, having fun, seeing friends, going on holiday, going to the gym, festivals, traveling, everything. And I was definitely the type of person who you might have to book in to see them 6 months in advance because my calendar was so full.
And I think that is just so normal at that age, isn't it? To have that very kind of busy, overbooked lifestyle. And we don't even realize that that could be having an impact on our health, could be kind of dysregulating in any way. We're just not aware of that.
Yeah, it's so normal now, isn't it?
Absolutely normalized, yeah. So fast forward a little bit and let's think about your chronic symptoms and how they actually arose and how they kind of progressed on.
So I had all kinds of symptoms, literally a list like as long as my arm. And eventually the diagnoses that came through were like ME, CFS, POTS, MCAS symptoms, severe IBS, long COVID, food intolerances. Like the sort of day to day was really severe brain fog, aches and pains, really sort of weird twitchy muscles in random places that just wouldn't stop, and my arm would just go twitching for an hour, and it'd like keep me awake in the night. Yeah, hormonal issues, like visual disturbances where I felt like there was sort of snow at the edge of my vision, everything.
Gosh.
Um, and I'd had sort of minor memory problems after I first had COVID in March 2020. But it was so easy to just be like, oh, I'm just working too hard. Uh, and oh, yeah, I just have a busy life. And then it's only sort of with like a potential parasite, various gastro infections, another six COVID infections, that then it all sort of became too big to ignore.
Gosh, and do you track all of this back to having COVID? And, did the symptoms start after a COVID infection or was it before that?
So I think for most of the time that I was trying to recover, I'd put it down to COVID. Only once I started recovering and really started understanding more about mind body conditions and how they develop, it was only then that I sort of realized that there had been some, small niggles, some mild digestive problems or, a little bit of reflux or heartburn type stomachy symptoms that didn't really have a cause. And just, like bad PMS, things like that, that I hadn't quite realized that those things were signs that my nervous system was feeling already under pressure.
Hmm. But they worsened after COVID, so it was easy
Yeah.
to link the
Yeah.
symptoms to COVID and specifically to long COVID and so much
Yeah.
fear in the community about long COVID and the debilitating impact of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was loads of new symptoms that came with it. There was some really weird things like my hands and feet would go black if I was still for too long. So they'd like it was like the blood would pool in the end of my fingers and toes, so they'd sort of look purpley. And then if I'd been there for ages, they'd go almost black. Rashes, ulcers. Like I had ulcers on my tonsils that didn't go for months, or they like I kept thinking they were a bit better and then they'd come back. Yeah, COVID definitely brought a whole host of like new really intense symptoms.
Mm. So many puzzling chronic symptoms. What was your understanding of what was happening in your body and what you might need to do to relieve these symptoms?
I mean, at the time, I was just completely terrified. I just felt like my body was falling apart. I was like, there's every time I'd think I was sort of, I'd find a temporary solution for one symptom, then another one would pop up, and then something else would worsen, or I'd, try some magnesium body butter on my hips so that I could lie down without, without being in agony. And
Mm.
then when that happened, but then when I sat up again, my heart rate would go crazy. So it'd be like one thing and another just constantly, all the time. And I think because I'd gone from, being functioning and living completely normally to bedbound and completely dependent, I thought that, that the parasite that I might have had hadn't gone, or that there must be something going on. There was one point where I was like, oh my God, have I got a brain tumor or something? Like, Matt, really, there's a lot happening here
Mm.
and it's out of control.
Gosh, and I know
Yeah.
you were given a number of diagnoses, weren't you? Long COVID, ME, CFS, POTS, orthostatic hypertension, IBS, mast cell type symptoms. And did getting any of these diagnoses like really help you or provide a way kind of forward in terms of treatment?
Um, no. No, not really. I
Mm.
think initially I felt like it helped to get a diagnosis because I was like, okay, well, that's the thing that it is then. Like, I think especially the long COVID one, with long COVID, then I was like, okay, well, the research says there's like over 220 symptoms that people can have. So, well, at least that's that. But then it sort of didn't lead me anywhere because it was like, well, some people get better, some people don't. We don't really know why or what's going on.
Mm.
Um, and sort of similar with the pot stuff, it was like, great, okay, now you go and see a cardiologist and they'll prescribe you some steroids, which actually made me feel not good at all. So
Mm.
I didn't take them for very long. Um, and it was just sort of lots of lifestyle advice about drink lots of water, high salt diet, all that kind of stuff. At my worst, I was drinking like 10 liters of water a day because
Mm.
I was just so thirsty all the time. One of my things was how dry my mouth felt constantly. So
Mm.
I'd drink 2 liters of water before getting out of bed, like before I could sit up in the morning, I'd be like, drink 2 liters of water. Yeah, it
Mm.
was ridiculous.
And I imagine like being a speech therapist, having that kind of professional background in the biomedical approach, and I'm sure having a lot of trust in biomedical approaches, rightly so. I imagine it's really distressing when these kind of diagnoses don't provide a clear pathway forward in terms of treatments that can provide lasting relief.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, because I had always had so much trust in the NHS and the system that I was part of, I did feel really disappointed and quite lost, really, because I was like, that's who I trust. And I know that there's sort of these other more holistic options out there, but I like to do the evidence-based approach. And I think what I didn't realize was how much an evidence-based approach is, first of all, takes 17 years from research to practice, but also that it depends on, you can't expect your everyday GP to have all this specialist knowledge because you're reading research articles from all different types of specialisms who are, you have to bring all that information together. It's not all in one place in a neat journal article that says, this is the whole way that the mind and body work together. Like that isn't one beautiful journal yet. And there's a lot that your average GP isn't going to get to see or they don't have time to. Yeah,
But
it was.
understandable, like you're saying, because it's so difficult in that situation, isn't it, where you get such a limited amount of time with somebody and it's a complex situation. And to really, be able to understand what's going on and explain things, it's very, very challenging. So let's talk about the impact that these symptoms had on your life. I mean, just listening to some of them, I can imagine what kind of impact they had, but talk us through that.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, I couldn't do anything. Um, I was very isolated, and I was very lucky in the fact that I've got a really good partner who I lived with already, who did a lot of just everyday basic cares for me. And then both of our families sort of came together and a couple of friends to really just create a care team to help me. But I mean, the difficult part was that socializing was so exhausting that I couldn't actually handle really anyone being in the same room or seeing anybody or talking to anyone on the phone, replying to a WhatsApp message. It all just felt like each time I had that, it felt so cognitively draining that I felt like I just couldn't engage with people. And there wasn't, people could come and tell me what they'd been up to, but it was like, I'm lying here. And the only sort of things that I did at any point were like long-term sickness meetings on the computer and and the odd physio appointment in a small period. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, it's just so devastating, isn't it? You go from being this very busy, active young professional with a rich and rewarding life, and suddenly you're just, bedbound, managing all these different chronic symptoms, depending on other people for your basic needs. It's just, I always say chronic illness just reaches into every part of your life and just really, materially changes it for the worse, that ability to work and sleep and exercise and socialize and I mean just enjoy your life really, and then a huge impact on mental health from this is what has become of your life, and especially when you don't see a clear path out of those symptoms, it's just devastating, really depressing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I sort of could muster enough energy to look on the computer for anything, it would be researching how to get better and like
Mm.
looking for, is there anybody else out there sort of thing who's as messed up as I am. And I found that quite a sort of challenging process, not just from a fatigue point of view, but also because what I found were like quite negative Facebook groups or things where people were, if anyone said, "Oh, is there hope? Can I get better?" People would say, "No, absolutely not." And it would be, stories of people who were 5 more, 10 more years down the line than me, still really struggling. And I found that so
Yeah.
difficult to sort of know that
Mm.
there might not be any hope and I might just have to try and get used to it.
Yeah, it's really difficult because people are so well intentioned and they're just sharing their own experience, but it sets up a huge expectation that this is going to be what your life will develop like, and a huge amount of fear. I mean, it really adds to the fear around those symptoms, which we then learn later is actually really kind of counterproductive for healing, isn't it? So I'm interested how you actually came across the science of neuroplasticity or mind-body medicine approach, which obviously offers a very different explanation for chronic symptoms like this, that are kind of unexplained and hard to treat. So how did you come across that science?
I actually already knew about neuroplasticity because I used it at work all the time. So, like, if somebody's had a stroke and this part of their brain doesn't work, that we'd create a new pathway to go around the part that doesn't work anymore, where the cells have died. So, I already knew about it, but obviously, for some reason, had not thought to be able to apply it to myself in that situation. Um, so, yeah, it was really sort of finding a video of Raylan Eagle's own recovery story on YouTube was like the bit that gave me hope because I was like, if she can get better after 10 years, something can happen. Maybe there's hope. I sort of spent a long time on her YouTube channel. And she or somebody else must have mentioned the autonomic nervous system. And then I started making more connections, like the postural orthostatic tachycardia stuff is very similar to how somebody with a high spinal injury presents. They have like lots of similar symptoms, and also that some of the digestive stuff. And I was like, and I know about swallowing, this part's voluntary. And then when it gets to a certain level, then it becomes a reflex. And I was like, and that part's managed by your autonomic nervous system, and the top part's fine. And I can feel where it gets stuck, and that's the bit that's automatic. So I'd started sort of realizing that a lot of the stuff made more sense as a dysautonomia rather than like 500 different diagnoses of other things. And yeah, I think that sort of helped me sort of dip my toe into the prospect of other ways of healing, really.
And when you started to look at your symptoms through that different lens, through the lens of the nervous system specifically, and connecting all the dots there, how did that change your kind of understanding of what was causing them?
It was, to be fair, it just finally made sense. I
Mm,
felt like this huge relief. I know that it's not all in my head, but finally I've got a way of explaining it to somebody else, because that was one of the things that I found the hardest, was to try and help the people around me understand what was going on when I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, and so then finally there was this thing, and I was like, oh, it all makes sense. What a relief, actually. Like,
mm,
yeah, it's horrendous, but at least I know what it is in a way that actually makes sense and has a logical route to improving and recovery.
mm. Yeah, so much relief and so much hope provided by that understanding. And it just starts to make sense of all our experience as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
it, but
really,
it's
really
such a shift, isn't it? It's like from seeing symptoms as this very dangerous thing that reflects some kind of structural damage or illness, and then understanding that actually very, very real and very debilitating symptoms can be caused by learned neural pathways and very much rooted in nervous system dysregulation. It's that nervous system that is stuck in threat mode with your threat physiology activated, and that can look like so many different types of symptoms like you had. And this is not a weakness, it's just biology. It's how it works. It's your nervous system doing its very best to protect you, but it's in that overprotective mode. It's got stuck there, and we need to help it to come out of that mode. And we can do. That's the hope of this approach, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that understanding made such a difference, just to see that there was an option, there were ways to do it. And if I can, like if I can help somebody get back to eating and drinking or get back to communicating after they've had a stroke, why can't I get myself back to walking further than across the road and back?
Mhm. Yeah, amazing. And then once you did understand that science and the role of the nervous system, what did you actually do to recover? Because I feel like this is the golden question, isn't it? It's what people ask recoveries is, okay, well, what did you actually do? How did you implement that science? What tools and techniques did you use to like sort of bring it to life within your own life to recover?
So I did a few courses. The first thing that I did was a brain retraining course by Jason McTiernan called I Can Thrive. And that sort of taught me specific practices involving choosing different states or emotions, visualizations, sort of physical posture as well. And then like actually feeling the gratitude as if what I wanted had already happened. Later introduced more sort of physical nervous system practices, and did some stuff from Heal by Jen Mann and Carden Raven.
Mhm.
Um, and then also did some trauma therapy with which involved physical touch as well. So it was like talking and physical touch. And those sort of unlocked another level of feeling well and energetic and like myself again. Um, but I mean, I did do a lot of other stuff before that, learning to pace, learning to say no, eating well, prioritizing myself and prioritizing rest at the very beginning was helpful in order to stabilize,
Mm.
because I did need to stabilize before I could start making the big steps into what I was doing next. But yeah, all the brain retraining, emotional processing, sort of nervous system stuff, it was work, definitely. Like at the beginning, I was doing about 30 practices a day, which were anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes, and had little reminder on my phone so that I knew that I had to stick to it. And I think there was a big part of it, which was about a huge mindset shift, really, about realizing that no one else was going to be able to fix it for me. There was going to be no magic pill. No one else was going to be able to do it. And the only person who could get me out of that horrendous situation was me.
Mm.
And the only way to do it was by this really intense, regular, scheduled practice,
Mm.
which was hard, but so worth it.
Yeah, and there's really something to that, isn't there? In that, you realize that a lot of this is inner work. Nobody can do it for you. And nobody can even tell you the exact pathway to healing because it's about sort of figuring out for yourself like what resonates with your nervous system, what helps you to feel safer. So it's really kind of an inside job in a way. And you need to build your trust in your ability to know what you need and to take those steps for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you went from having to do practices, very many times a day. I imagine over time, did that reduce? Like, how did the journey sort of progress for you?
Yeah, so I think probably about 3 weeks in, I'd I'd started to be able to do very short walks. So I might go out somewhere in the wheelchair with my partner pushing me, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to walk from here to that tree.
Mm.
Let's try 10 meters. Let's see how
Mm.
we go. But just the difference in my belief in recovery, like I really practiced. That was part of what I was doing in those 30 practices a day, was practicing believing that I could do it. And even though I thought I believed it before, there was too much fear before. And this was like practicing feeling and being confident and knowing, without a doubt, I was definitely going to do it. It was only a matter of time. And yeah, so then I started making progress and I was like, oh wow, like I actually, whew, I can walk somewhere. I had a little jar of joy, which was where I'd write down things every day. I'd write down what I'd achieved that day. And I found them all recently, actually, and it was very emotional
Oh.
because it was things like I stood up for 1 minute in the shower, that sort of thing. So it was like really, really little things, but they were so massive at the time. And I
Mm.
think just recognizing all those tiny steps by writing them down actually made such a difference. And it sort of taught me to practice celebrating each achievement, because then that's what motivates you to take the next step. And
Mm.
there definitely was like setbacks and things that were more difficult within that.
Mm.
But once I'd started brain retraining, the setbacks in terms of how long they were and how intense they were was much less. So it felt like I could, even when I was in a relapse, I knew that this wasn't as bad as the ones that I'd had before. So I was like, okay, just, like stick with the plan, stick with the plan. And, I luckily had some very handy and regular pep talks from the people around me to be like, because they could see the progress too. And then so I think it took probably about 8 months from when I started brain retraining to daring to admit out loud that I thought I was better.
Mm.
And I think one of the things that is definitely potentially more difficult for women is your cycle can feel like it's taking you back 5 steps.
Mhm.
And that then can be like, oh no, how am I gonna, oh, got to get up that hill again. And then, you might go back for a couple of weeks even.
Mm.
But what was interesting is that all those sort of really intense PMS symptoms also improved with everything else. And I was like, oh, that one I really hadn't like connected the dots with that until it happened. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, I actually feel fine. How strange. Exciting.
Oh my gosh. So it's a very non-linear pathway, it sounds like. But if you were able to take a step back, you could see there's a kind of upwards trajectory. And I think it's amazing you had people cheering you on because often this journey can feel so lonely. You might not know anybody in your real life who's got symptoms of this kind of severity, this, so debilitating, or to be taking this sort of, different pathway to recovery. So the fact that you had people around you who were on board, cheering you on, helping you when you experience those setbacks is just, fantastic. And I know that's part of why you wanted to create your own community to help people. So once you actually did recover after those 8 months and, and beyond, and you felt like you'd got back to a more kind of like normal life. What did that look like for you on the other side of this journey?
I mean, just like better than it could have been before, I think. And like, I know this is not what anyone could imagine is true, or what people might feel ready to hear. But I am actually grateful for it because it taught me about how to value myself and how to put my needs first. And also just to do what I want. Like life is short and you don't know when something's going to happen. So do the things that you want to do. And so now, yeah, I'm a lot more in tune with what I want, what I need. I'm doing exercise again. I've done more new things in the past year than I've ever done before. Like
Mm.
I've traveled on my own. I mean, tried not very well, but I have tried lots of times to stand up on a surfboard. Like there's some really, and they're just things that I would have never done before. Yeah, just the freedom. The freedom has changed everything really.
Mm.
So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
an amazing gift, isn't it? And we don't really learn this usually in life, is like how to look after our nervous system, how to live in a way that nourishes the nervous system. And that's what we learn on the journey of recovery. And then we take that into the rest of our life, and life looks radically different to how it looked before. And it can be hard to have gratitude for an experience that was so hard, such
Yeah.
debilitating symptoms. But, certainly I think we can be grateful for the outcomes, the learning, the way life
Yeah.
is now as a result of it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also just that, because life still happens, like when you're out the other side of recovery, you're well and it's amazing. But, there is days where something else happens in your life and you feel really sad and that makes you want to curl up under a duvet for the day. But it's also knowing, like being enough in touch with yourself to know when that happens, why that happens, and then knowing what you can do about it. So you're not like stuck or lost. You know you've got all these tools, like you can help yourself in all these different situations that life's gonna throw at you because life is life,
Mhm.
but you've got all these options now.
Mm. Yeah, these tools for, healthy ways to process our emotions, to regulate, to train the brain. These are useful for life beyond recovery, and they're amazing gifts to have, aren't they?
Yeah.
So reflecting back with the benefit of hindsight, it's always a beautiful thing. What do you think were the key lessons that you learned from your healing journey?
Um, number one, never give up because there are so many times that you want to,
Mm.
but like, yeah, don't because you can get somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's really good when you do. And I think probably also just that your body can't do its job if it's in fight or flight.
Hmm.
Like it can't heal itself from anything. Cuts take longer to heal, ulcers take longer to heal. Your immune system's down and you catch more illnesses because your nervous system's already in danger mode and it thinks that each little thing is, the biggest thing and it might kill you. So it's just trying to protect you.
Mm.
But realizing that if you can get your nervous system into a state that feels safe, relaxed, calm, or, happy, fun, silly, all the sort of normal emotions,
Mm.
but to just let it do its job, you sort of have to change how you treat it.
Yeah, you have to support it to regulate. It's going to get activated, that's life, but you have to
Yeah.
build in these pockets of peace and calm and soothing and support the nervous system to find balance. Fantastic. So tell us about Recovery Road, because I know this is the community that was inspired by your own recovery journey and your passion to help others who are healing chronic symptoms. So tell us all about it.
So Recovery Road was definitely born from my own challenging experience. At the moment, it's a free online community for anyone who's affected by chronic illness. So that can be somebody who's living with it, somebody who's caring for somebody with it, somebody who's out the other side, or professionals who just want to hear a patient perspective. Like anybody can join. And part of it is because when I was sick, I'd felt really alone. No one could really understand what it felt like.
Mhm.
And because the places that I could find that did have those people felt too much for me, too sort of negative, and I felt like it was not helpful for where I was at that time. I wanted to create a space that was more positive, so where you can go and not be overwhelmed, like from a visual perspective, not be completely overwhelmed by adverts and visual overload and
Mm.
pop-ups and all the stress and intensity of social media. But just to have somewhere to go where you can like ask a question, find out a bit more about what the mind body approach is, and connect with other people if you want someone to talk to as you go through it. And just like G each other up a bit. I think I needed to hear from people who had recovered or were recovering to
Mm.
help me believe that it was a possibility. Yeah, relatable recovery stories are key to changing that belief. When I got better, I knew I had to do something. And I want to like climb to the top of the tallest building in the world and like tell everyone, really just like properly shout it from the rooftops that it's possible, because I think I was so skeptical, so,
Mm.
so skeptical. I think, because of my background,
Mm.
it didn't seem like it was going to be something that was for me. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that resonates very much with me, and I know with a lot of people that when you first come to it, you think it might be a bit woo, and it's only when you realize that this is neuroscience based and it's evidence based, does that really shift your perspective. And then finding people who've actually used this science to recover and are now back to active, rewarding lives, that's just deeply reassuring. So it's amazing what you're doing, and I know you also have big plans for how Recovery Road will go on to develop. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, for now, we're focused on building that sort of safe and positive community space that's for anybody. But because of that journey that I had, once I knew that I could recover and I knew I needed some sort of mind body approach, and I knew that I'd need some, some sort of brain retraining or nervous system, something. But then I felt completely overwhelmed. And what I really wanted was somebody to sort of scoop me up and say, hey, tell me about you. Okay, this one might work. And so that's what we're trying to do, really. So we're developing a centralized hub for comparing different recovery courses and options, that also gives individualized guidance for people who want it. So you also will be able to just look and see what's out there. But if you want that extra support, then that is there as well. So if anyone's interested or wants to be included in that, then they can just sign up on our website and we'll keep you in the loop.
Fantastic. And I will put links to where people can find you and can find Recovery Road so they can learn more about you and connect with the community and, get that support that so many people need. And so is there anything else before we kind of wrap things up that you want to share with, about your own story or about Recovery Road that you think would be
I
helpful?
think it's really useful to know that I was really skeptical. I feel like that's something I needed to see other people who were skeptical
Mhm.
because at the beginning, I felt offended when I first heard about it. I felt offended that it might be like it was saying that it was all in my head. And I think that's such a damaging feeling. And I think a lot of us have also had those experiences at some point, either from, medical professionals, family, friends, whoever, who just don't quite understand it. And yeah, it's useful to know that there is real science behind it.
Mm.
And, using these resources like you've got on Living Proof, using these spaces where we can connect all the dots together and look at the research and, see that there are medical professionals across the world who are studying this stuff and there is research happening and it all, it is real. And look at all these people, and that's part of what I want us to be able to do together is to have this big community worldwide of all the people who are recovering, who have recovered, who want to get there. Because in the end, that's how we're going to make changes big, you
Mm.
know,
Mm.
like that's how we change the world.
Amazing. I really feel your passion for this. And I just want to say a huge thank you both for being here today to talk about your inspiring story, but very much for the work that you're doing in this community to try to help others. It's so needed, and I know you're so passionate about it. So a huge thank you from us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.